The reason we're here today is to talk about the most important thing after you get out of the University of Maryland. It's jobs. How do you get one? Where do you look to find one? Who's hiring? What are they looking for? And so today we've got a little bit of representation of everything. We've got radio, we've got television, we've got print, we've got web, and we've got an individual entrepreneur. Which many of us have become these days, and it is a good thing. So let me just start out with a little bit of tradition and ask Ron at the Baltimore Sun, what are you looking for and what are you finding?
Well, I'm looking for somebody who has experience, and that's going to sound strange. I'm looking for college students who have experience, but how many of my former interns, current interns, are in the house right now? Raise your hand. There's 4. And every student that I've seen from Maryland's program has written for the Diamondback or other publications on campus, has done work outside campus, and comes to me prepared to step right in and write. So what I'm seeing, I've been really impressed with. And last summer, I had 3 interns, academic interns. They all have jobs. So, and we've had a pretty good track record of if you intern at the Baltimore Sun, you're going to find a job. So I hope that bodes well for those in the audience that have worked for me. And maybe there's some future interns in here, too. So.
Great. And Kevin Laughlin, over to SB Nation.
Sure.
All web stuff.
That's right, yeah. So we are digital only at this moment. But similarly, you know, we're looking for people who have writing experience. You're getting a lot of it in college. We actually have a lot of folks who are actually write for us while they're in school, or maybe they're blogging. They're either writing for their school paper, or maybe they're writing for a team blog or things like that. We're looking for people who, you know, obviously can write, are also very web savvy. So understand that in today's environment, that you know, not only are you responsible for writing, but you're responsible for understanding how to distribute your content. It sort of takes everyone to be able to do that effectively. So how do you use social media? How do you work contacts that you have to help distribute your content? We're looking for people who understand that, and we're looking for people who understand how to package things for the web. So how to take a story but maybe add multimedia components to it, how to curate using other material that's out there for you. And really how to listen to and learn from your audience, both from having the openness to look at analytics and understand how that's going to help you and shape your writing, but also to use your direct audience and then the audience that's out there at large to help you understand where to take a story next.
All right. And Monte, USA Today, obviously in some real shift of philosophy right now. Going from print to digital. So what was USA Today looking for, and what do you think it's looking for now?
We've always looked for people who are web savvy, and by that I don't mean you have to learn or know how to write code or anything like that, but you need to be familiar with social media and how to package stories and things of that sort. But 2 key things that we've always looked for. One is just understanding the basics of journalism, knowing how to do an interview, knowing how to write it, knowing how to condense it down to make sense, know how to use quotes, know how to draw quotes out of people. Those sorts of things are really important. The other thing is, how many are just sports oriented or want to go into sports as opposed to just general? Okay, that's a good sized group right there. The other thing I would say is, it's fine to understand everything about sports, but there's a whole world out there that plays into the world of sports, so don't think that you want to go into sports and that's all you need to know or understand. Anything that happens tends to have an impact on what happens in sports. If there's a tornado in Kansas, that's going to have an impact on sports because that community is going to be disrupted to no end. So you have to be able to assimilate everything that goes on and translate it into the world of sports. I should mention, yeah, that there is a big shift going on right now. We've been, for many years, we were going more into the digital area. Now it's accelerated. And actually, as it turns out, a little bit of self-disclosure here, tomorrow's my last day at USA Today. So, after we can exchange resume tips, we can, do that. But
actually, this is your goodbye party.
This is my goodbye party, right, exactly. Free pizza for everybody. It's being accelerated to a great degree, but at the same time, the basics of journalism are still key.
All right. Chris, as I was driving back to campus, of course, I'm tuned into 106.7 because you have the exclusive rights to Nationals broadcast. Thank you very much. Very excited about starting off that win. But what are you looking for in terms of broadcast talent? And given the fact that you folks do have a web presence, are you looking for people who can write as well?
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. Everyone hears radio and they think old. Let's be honest. It's been around a while. So, but it's not just a radio station anymore, and I think that goes. You're going to hear that from everybody. It's about well-rounded individuals that can come in and produce a radio show or be on the radio or go after a story and translate it on the air, and then understand how that also is translated on the web, and taking that material, either repackaging it or writing a story about it or doing a podcast about it or finding some way to translate it online as well. People that, I hire people that understand social media and how that can drive our page views on our website and our ratings on the air. It all kind of goes together. You need to be able to multitask and kind of have a whole world view of how what you're doing right now can be translated across all of our platforms. We are on the air. We have HD radio, which no one in here has or probably ever will. Streaming, podcasting. We podcast every second of every single day of our station.
Chris, do you have a news operation?
We have a news operation. We also, not only do we have our own news operation, but we actually just launched an all-news radio station at 99.1 FM, and we provide the news, the sports news for that as well. So my sports news people are doing sports news for us and 99.1 and our website, sometimes Channel 9. So you have to kind of be able to do everything. And it's an old medium, but I have a lot of people on my staff. Most of my staff's between 22 and 35, especially on the production end of things. So, I'm definitely looking for people that are passionate about sports, but as was said before, that understand how sports can impact society and how society can impact sports, because frankly, that's what we talk about more than we talk about who won the game last night. It's not necessarily about X's and O's, it's about the storylines, and we're discussing that. We're not just breaking down double plays,
So 106.7 is expanding.
Yes, very much so. We launched a little less than 3 years ago. CBS Radio launched 6 FM sports stations. Sports has generally been an AM radio format. It's exploded across the country on FM and has huge digital impact as well online. So it's definitely a very growing field or segment of radio.
And Andy Siegel over at Comcast CS in Washington, which now also has a website and has hired people who spent their careers at newspapers writing copy. How's that happen?
On the digital side of things, I think, someone had mentioned it earlier, as much as we evolve as an industry and as a media, you can talk about Twitter and Facebook and HD radio all you want, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to kind of the core values of journalism that we all learned 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's all the same. And so whether you're streaming it online or whether you're broadcasting it at HD radio, whether you're tweeting it or whether you're writing it in a newspaper that gets delivered onto into a mailbox in the morning, the core values have to be the same. So we're hiring journalists. We want people who want to find the truth and who care about it, not to spread rumor or create fake Twitter accounts, which are very bad things. We want journalists, Kevin. That's what we want, people who make us better, and they have that new school appreciation for what it takes to succeed in 2012, but also an old school feel and old school work ethic and those core journalistic values that define this industry and will continue to do so.
And Tony, you're not shy of hiring journalists, and neither is NFL through NFL.com. Maybe you can even talk about that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like similar to CSN and everyone else.
I'm sorry. That's okay. You work for the Washington Post, you can come in anytime you want. That's the only place I hear that.
No, but definitely, when you work in PR and NFL, you have to have journalism experience because we're looking for good writers. But also, when I'm preparing, Coach Shanahan for a press conference, you're going to start thinking like a journalist to prepare the questions that he's going to answer. So it's kind of like an offensive player playing defense. You can anticipate what the offense is going to do because at one point you're an offensive player. So you got to be able to write. You got to be able to be flexible. You mentioned something earlier, multimedia. Nowadays, you have to be very flexible. You have to know our bloggers. You have to know we hire a blogger. We hire people to work on a website. Bottom line is you have to be able to write and be a people person in my field.
And how much has your office expanded since you started as an intern with the Dallas Cowboys in what year? 19?
Yeah,
to now running the Redskins communications department.
It's exploded. It exploded. I mean, I might sound like a dinosaur, but when I first started in the league, we didn't have the internet. And since then, it's now a department, and we have a broadcasting department. I mean, it's expanded tenfold. I mean, some departments were just 2. Now you have about 10 people. So, I mean, it's exploded.
Wow.
Let me ask him a question. When you prepared Coach Shanahan, what was the first question you prepared him for? How about Coach Shanahan? Who's going to start a quarterback next week?
We'll get back to that. Well, Peter Perl, you walked in at an opportune time. We've kind of run through the panel. I'm leaving Jane Leavy for last, but what is the Washington Post looking for these days in terms of new employees? And are you hiring for the print side, or are you hiring for the website, or are you hiring for both?
We still are doing some hiring, very, very selectively. Our newsroom has been downsizing, but we're not freezing our hiring, and we're still looking for really smart, curious, talented young people. Having said that, our newsroom has changed dramatically, and I don't know how much of this discussion has gone on already, but one of the exciting things is the reinvention of newsrooms. And those of us who've been around for a while, we've sort of gotten over the stages of grief and mourning and everything, and now we have quite a few really smart young people. The majority of the hires we've had, I would say, have been people who first got on our radar screen for digital skills, but in thinking about this discussion and journalism with a sports orientation, honestly, I wouldn't look at the Post as a place to start your career, and I started, and I'm sure many people around here started at smaller venues, developing the kind of skills that make you really indispensable to any news organization. So I just want to emphasize that we're looking for people with really the basics still. The fundamentals are still crucial. Reporting, writing, a good broad education, real healthy curiosity about what makes the world go, what makes the sports world go. The broader your portfolio, the better. Somebody who's great at writing a game story, that's all well and good, but somebody who's also really tuned into sports as a business and really good profile writing, and clips remain to me the most valuable currency and the thing that gets people's attention, gets our attention, and all the other skills, it's like in a sports setting you have the 4 or 5 skills that make up a big league baseball player, and if you've got 4 of them, that's really great. And if you've got that 5th one, that's terrific. And if you've got a few little bells and whistles added onto that, then so much the better. So we really are not thinking anymore about print versus digital hires, except in a couple of really specialized circumstances. We're still really looking for, you know, journalists with the fundamentals. And in the last couple of years, we've hired 1 or 2 young journalists, but in most cases, it's people who have worked at small to medium-sized places and really gotten some good experience. And then, you know, we have a decent crop of young people who are the future of the organization.
Would Eli fit into that category?
Eli would be considered somebody.
Can you tell his story a little bit?
Sure.
Since he started out in sports, I think.
Eli came to us. Oh yeah, we have a distinguished.
Eli Saslow.
Eli
Right.
Saslow came to us as a summer intern from Syracuse 4 years ago, 5, whatever it is, and was a really crackerjack high school sports writer in his first incarnation, and just clearly was covering high school sports in a whole different dimension, and was writing things that were just really just plain old interesting reading, and finding the kinds of stories that other people in those jobs didn't find, and some of our veteran people haven't found. And you know, Eli is now you know, one of our top enterprise reporters on the national staff. Wrote a lovely book about people writing letters to Barack Obama, and you'll see some terrific journalism almost always on the front page of the Post, written by Eli, who probably now is about 30. Coming over here, and George knows some of this too, I mean, one of the people who started at the Washington Post under our brilliant series of sports editors, but mostly George Solomon, was a guy named David Remnick, who's now the editor of The New Yorker. So, you know, there's been a lot of great people who come through sports, and a lot of people who have gone in and out of sports writing and gone on to great things. Either
Don't mention Kornheiser, he'll sue you.
My attorney is perfectly prepared for anything that Mr. Kornheiser will throw at me. Yeah, so you know, right, Eli would be sort of the model of that, and you know, the last person we hired as a sports writer in high school sports had only a little bit. Oh, and then there's Chico Harlan is also another guy. Chico, also a Syracuse guy. From, you know, one of those competing brands from their Newhouse School, you know, had some sports clips and some other clips and just a bunch of interesting writing. And, you know, we hired him as our nationals reporter, and he did a fine job, except he wasn't into doing it, and now he's in Tokyo.
Even said so.
He did. He did. And now Chico's in Tokyo. And, you know, we still remain the kind of place where even though we're shrinking like a lot of other media are, still a whole lot of opportunities, and all built around the fundamentals.
Jane Leavy, what do you make of this new world of journalism?
My office is not expanding. My office is a mess. One person works there, me. I wasn't really kidding, though George might not believe me. It was easier when there was one way to be a sports writer. You groveled and begged and pleaded, and if you were lucky, George hired you. And then you got to cover all sorts of things like doubleheaders in Cleveland. Remember that? When Cleveland really stunk. But I've never hired anybody. I've never blogged. I have 697 followers on Twitter, and I've never issued a single 140-character message to anybody, and I never will, much to my publisher's dismay. My entire life's work is built on the assumption that you cannot say anything other than, war was declared today, of importance in 140 characters. I am a writer. I don't call myself a sports writer, though that's what I do. I'm a writer. And if I was you guys today, I would take any damn job in journalism that somebody offered me. My dad was an entertainment lawyer. And one day when I was bitching fiercely about how I was blocked on some story for George, my father, who represented a lot of famous writers, including journalists, said to me with no kindness at all, writers write. And he was correct, he was right. The best thing you can do is write for free, write for anybody that will give you the chance to write. Make sure you spell people's names correctly. Make sure you know whether they're alive or dead. I had a piece in Sports Illustrated 2 weeks ago, which is all about the fact that I killed off a guy in the Mantle book who isn't dead. And his wife sent me an email saying, could I please return Frank to the undead? This was a pitcher who pitched for the Boston Red Sox before they were, most holy nation status.
Yeah, but Jane, only you could get a mistake into Sports Illustrated.
Is that? Wasn't that amazing?
It's a remarkable performance on your part.
Well, and what makes it even better, if you go back and look, this is in the baseball preview section. There's a picture that they say Frank helped his own cause. Here he is sliding in or scoring, a run under Yogi Berra's tag, and they got it wrong. It wasn't Frank Sullivan. It was Haywood Sullivan, the now dead former catcher. And you can't believe how glad I was that they screwed that up. I was just thrilled. Haywood is dead. Frank is so alive. Actually, can you reach that? Because I can't, if I do, I'm going to fall off here. I'm going to read you something. Yeah, here, hold a second. Okay, thank you. This is what writing is about. Oh, no, did I leave it in the car? I probably did.
John is your first employee now?
Yeah, exactly. Wait a minute. Let me see if I have it. Okay, Frank is alive. Frank wrote me an email yesterday that basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, be careful when you're paraphrasing and quoting directly, that as a result of my thing, as he referred to it, in SI, he had heard from hundreds of people, and it was all nice. And that he had just heard from a guy he hadn't spoken to in more than 50 years. And that gentleman, his name was John Donnelly, served with Frank in Korea. And they both fought on Hill 222, which none of you and even I are too young to remember. But it was a gruesome and hellacious battle that went on. And faced with a 55 millimeter, I think he said, is that right? Gun that the Chinese were firing at the GIs. This guy, John Donnelly, and another soldier decided, rather than to be killed, to jump off this huge cliff and somehow survived. The other guy didn't. John Donnelly did. And John Donnelly somehow made his way back to the U.S. lines, rejoined his unit, rejoined the fight. And Frank had not spoken to him or heard from him since he jumped off the cliff. And yesterday he got an email from John Donnelly. So he said to me, I am in your debt for your writing and for your caring, and because I now have John back in my life. That's why I write. And Frank has forgiven me for killing him off. It's evidence that even if you make a mistake, you better admit it. You might get it published in Sports Illustrated if you admit it. And B, and this is a serious thing, there are all different ways, obviously, as evidenced by all these guys, to be a sports writer now, or to get into the world of sports media, a word, frankly, I hate, so don't get me going on that. But the thing that I have found that is hardest to negotiate now is the lack of editing. I know George may find this astonishing to hear, but the fact that cyberspace is unlimited means they want stuff to fill it up. They can't possibly fill it up because it's unlimited, but they need copy. So it's a plethora of places and ways and opportunities to write, but they don't edit anymore. Nobody edits anymore. You are on your own. And believe me, nobody caught that I killed Frank Sullivan. Nobody caught at Sports Illustrated that they had the wrong guy sliding into home. So the thing that I would say that is hardest for me now, because guess what? We all make mistakes, is that there's no backup. There used to be George. Now I don't have George anymore. Would you like to, could you help me out? Yeah. Well, you weren't this nice to me either, so we're even. Anyway, I have a friend, a young friend, this is the last thing I'll tell you, who, there's two things people getting out of school want to be. A comedy writer in LA for a sitcom, or a sports writer. As far as I can tell, nobody wants to be anything else in the United States. So this young woman who's really smart and really talented, like you guys, goes out to LA, and she's gonna write for whatever is the next version of Seinfeld, past Curb Your Enthusiasm or whatever, and she can't get a job. There are no jobs. This woman graduated from Northwestern with every damn honor there, and she's turning down production jobs. She doesn't want to do production, she says. Her parents have now supported her for 2 years since graduation, and they asked my advice the other day. And I said, you telling me she was offered a job in production and she didn't take it? Are you kidding me? So my message to you is, yeah, you might have wished to have been Shirley Povich or Red Smith or Tom Boswell or any of these distinguished fellows over here, but start where you can. It doesn't have to be sports writing. It doesn't have to be at the Washington Post. Probably is not going to be. But start where you can. No experience like that is going to be lost on you. Just do it. And if you want my email address, I always give it out to anybody who's trying to get into this world. I'll give it to you. Anything I can do to help, I will. Thank you, sir.
And how many folks here have operations with internships still up and going? So just about everybody except Jane.
Jane, you could be an intern like Kramer had an intern.
I was going to ask Peter if he would take me back. Peter, can you take me back?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And are these internships run year round or just during the summer? Pretty much year round. Okay.
Different groups during different seasons.
Okay. And will USA Today, for example, given this new digital operation, have more internships or more job opportunities within sports?
Certainly more job opportunities, yeah. And the number of interns, we usually do, I think it's 16 interns a year, maybe it's 14 interns a year. And it's, spring, fall, summer. I've hired several interns that we've had, and someone mentioned earlier about showing your stuff, and I would second that, because if you show that you can do the job and your work ethic is impressive and you volunteer to do things and you show initiative, that's remembered. And even when the internship ends, don't let it go. I mean, work it, network it, talk to the people that you've worked with in that newsroom, whether it's the editors or the top editor or a designer or a copy editor, it doesn't matter who it is, but stay in touch with those people, because they'll help you find the opportunities that come out, because people want to help you. They want to do what they can if you're reciprocal on that. If you do the right job, they'll keep you in mind.
A lot of people in here always ask me, what should I put in front of a potential employer or somebody with an internship? And I give them my best advice, but what is it that you all don't want to see when someone comes forward?
I had a guy the other day who I knew before he even got to my office I was not going to hire him. He had never listened to our station before. He lived in Frederick, Maryland, and I said, can you get our signal in Frederick, Maryland? And he said, I don't know. We'd probably taken 5 steps from the lobby, and I already knew, done, not going to happen. You know.
Familiarity.
Well, I mean, that just shows that he has no idea, has no real direction, has no real interest, probably doesn't, you know, he just needs an internship. And he's probably stupid. Yeah. Yeah. But it just shows he has no real interest, you know. And I started out as an intern where I, you know, 14 years ago when I was an 18-year-old freshman in college and have never left. So I've worked for CBS Radio in DC for 14 years, started out as an intern in 1998, and it's been over 14 years, I'm still there. So internships are the best way in my mind to get your foot in the door and make contacts and meet people and find out if it's really what you want to do or not.
Anybody else want to volunteer a turnoff?
Yeah, I think one
Something
of
to
the
avoid?
things that I hope everyone in the room understands is that from, I'll include you, all of our perspectives is, you know, we want something too. So as one of the biggest turnoffs is a 4-paragraph cover letter about how badly they want to work there. Yeah, I know. You're already reaching out. You're already applying for the job. But I want you to make my network better. Tell me how you can do that. I know you want it. Show me you want it. Listen to my radio station. And if you don't listen to my radio station, at least tell me you do and find 5 or 6 things. Right. I mean, now, I mean, when I was graduating the University of Maryland in a different building, you know, you had to call around and find out the names of news directors and employers and things like that. Now, just Google it. If you're going to an interview, find out something about the person. Here's a hint. People like to talk about themselves. So if you go, and particularly in the media, they like to talk about themselves a lot. So if you Google a person and you find their LinkedIn page or their Twitter account, you could say and find a connection. Hey, by the way, I noticed that you wrote this piece that I really enjoyed. It's a way to actually get them engaged. But if, you know, somebody says, you know, I've had someone on the phone mispronounce the name of our network. So what do you do at ESPN SportsNet? Wow. Really? Well, we hang up on people often. So yeah, the turnoffs are not telling me what you can do and not showing any interest in showing me how you can make me better, because the employer is better by hiring good people. We want something too.
I'll piggyback on that. Someone's not going to take initiative. I mean, you said earlier, hey, who do I need to contact? Well, you need to contact this person. Okay, what's their number and what's their address? No, look it up. Like you say, Google it. That and really a sense of entitlement. People that come in with a sense of entitlement. I want to have this job. I want this. Oh, I'm not doing this. You're telling me what you're not going to do. No job is beneath you. If we're going to ask you to do something, you do it. So that's something that's really turned off.
Oh, and to whom it may concern drives me crazy. I will never I will throw it out. Yeah. I will throw it out. If you can't find the name of the hiring manager, then you're not a journalist. I mean, really.
I think a key element in the whole equation here is passion. That people here who are looking to hire people want to see passion, want to see energy. You know, this is one place I feel safe using sports metaphors. I mean, you know, you want the player who's going to, you know, run into the wall and do what has to be done to get the job done, and who truly is a team player. The ability to work in teams, to get along with people is crucial. But in order to get in the door, I mean, I think you really should ask yourself what your passion level truly is for whatever it is. I mean, sports writing in this case, you know, the numbers are such and the nature of the media is such that the competition is extremely intense. I end up telling people that it's become similar to what the fine arts used to be like, where, you know, your friends or colleagues who wanted to go into music or dance or art had to be prepared to, you know, work as a waiter or a waitress and then, you know, build their skill in some kind of freelance way to really launch their careers. So what I'm trying to say here is that, you know, really look inside yourself to decide, you know, how committed am I to this as my calling? And then what will distinguish you, I think, is that passion that should be clear. In our case, it's mostly clips. So if you send clips that are just an example of, I really know how to cover the game. Well, so does everybody else. But the clip that really shows a spark and shows either a creative idea or a whole different way of looking at something that shows that passion, and then that's followed up because that's who you are and how you come across in an interview, that's kind of the turn on or the turn off, in my opinion.
And the networking starts in college. It starts here at the Diamondback. Who do I usually call when hey, Jonas, I got a resume from Jacob. What do you think of him? Or whatever. And then the story that you can write for the Diamondback, Chris Eckerd, the Zach story, great story. I think any newspaper in the country would be proud to run that story. So what you're doing here, it lays the groundwork for your future. And it means when someone comes back to campus from previous Diamondbacks, start networking right away.
Kev, I'm just going to say, we offer game day. We offer season internships, summer internships. A lot of times they're for graduate students. But I offer game day internships where you can come in, go to FedEx Field and work game days to transcribe quotes. And I look for journalism students because they know what quotes are and what really something about the game that could be used to transcribe what we pass out to the reporters. Plus, it gives you a chance to network with other members of the media in the press box.
And Kevin, SB Nation's really been kind of whittling your talent pool.
Yeah.
What's the decision making that goes into that?
Well, a similar thing. I mean, we actually start. I mean, we have two big parts of our network. One, we have 320 blogs that are really sort of community passion points. And I mean, there are journalists there. There's also people who have other jobs and they just have a real passion for their team and writing, and they approach it from a different angle. On our national site, we actually hire a lot of young people. We have, even though we have some formal internships, we hire a lot of people for our news desk as well. And we often hire people who are still in school. But the same type of thing, I'm looking for great samples of what the writing is. I'm looking for initiative or other examples of initiative. A lot of times you find it within journalism students because they might be working hard or maybe they're willing to take kind of a beat and do something with it that's different than you've seen before, looking for things like that. And for us, I think what's really worked out is it's been a chance for young people to write and write a lot, and even when I worked at Fan House with Kevin, I think the notion of networking is really important because even after that we've been able to get people through our relationships, get people into SI and ESPN and other places as well.
Great. Well, let me open it up.
One
some
more
questions,
quick
or?
question for the whole panel is, if you were their parents, what would you tell them to do in June with the diplomas? Go to Europe. Peter?
Why do I have to answer that question? Listen to your parents, kids, and then do what you want to do.
No, they'll tell them to get a job, but...
Oh, yeah, they'll right. And if I were your parents, I would tell you to follow your passion.
Okay, that's a good answer.
You want me to answer that, since I've just done this with my daughter? Okay, because none of you are going to agree or like this. Okay. Like this? Short lead? Okay. I told my daughter, no tweet. I told my daughter, do not rush into anything. You're 22 years old. Kids, I think, who try to decide what they're going to do and narrow it too much, too fast, usually end up unhappy. There are about, 4% of the world that, kids who know they want to be firemen when they're 4, or maybe doctors. The rest of us, I started work for George when I was 27 years old. God knows why he hired me, but I was 27 years old. And before that, I thought I was going to be a Renaissance scholar. I probably didn't help my sports writing, but it made me a more literate writer to have studied Ben Jonson masks. But I really think people who try to force themselves into a narrow niche too soon often end up unhappy. I tell kids, do not go to law school right away. I mean, there are no jobs out there, but do not go to law school. Do, experience the world. Let that feed your voice. Yeah, get a job doing something. It doesn't matter what. Earn some money, stay home, help clean up the house, whatever. But I think narrowing yourself too soon is invariably a mistake.
I hate to say it, she's absolutely right.
Oh, thank you.
When I was
appreciate that.
When I was 15, I started at a weekly in my hometown. My mom actually drove me to my first game I had to cover. It's pretty embarrassing, but I showed up and told her to pick me up in 2 hours so I could go write the story. And I haven't stopped since. When I graduated in December, fashionably late, a December graduate, I started my first full-time job at the beginning of February, and I haven't slowed down since. And I regret it almost every single day, because when do you stop now? I mean, when you can't. And I think, yeah, I just think it's great advice. And, my dad would hate to hear that, because he said I was the only one who did it right. I got out of the house right away. I didn't come back and move in, but like my two deadbeat brothers. But take a break, take a deep breath when you graduate and figure out what you want to do with your life. And I think it's great advice, and I don't give it out enough. And it's glad to hear someone else.
I'm going to combine everything, okay? I'm going to say follow your passion. Number one, you got to follow your passion. Get as many internships as you can, because internships do one of two things. It tells you what you want to do, and it tells you what you don't want to do. All right? And then if you're really passionate about something, you really enjoy something, guess what? It's not going to be work. I've been doing this all this time. I never worked a day in my life because I really enjoy what I do. So if you really follow your heart and follow your passion, that's what I'll tell if I were your parents. That's what I do.
I agree 100% with that. Passion, internships, the whole thing. It's, when my daughter was in school, she was at UNC, and she told me that she wanted to go into journalism, and I said, do you see the life I live? I'm never home at night. I work weekends, the whole bit, and I tried to talk her out of it, but she's into it, and actually she starts Monday with the Post. And I couldn't be more proud of her, because she's really good. Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Way to go,
right.
Dad.
Yeah, I tried though. I tried, but I couldn't be more proud of what she's accomplished, because she really does have a passion for it, and she's really excited about it. And she did take a little time off, not as much as she could have, but for my wallet's sake, I'm glad she did it as short as she did.
I just like to say, I think there's value and merit in what everybody's saying, but the one message I always have for my students, and some of them are smiling at me because they've heard this before, is if you want it, then do it, and have the patience. I mean, this graduating class graduates on May 20th. If by May 22nd you don't have a job, that doesn't mean your journalism career is over. This is hard. There are opportunities. It's timing. There are contracts. Take a breath. Take a break. But if this is what you want, then go for it. And I mean, my oldest is in kindergarten, so I'll probably look at this a little differently later in life. But don't let anyone, including your parents, tell you to not follow your passion. You come to this campus at 18 years old, and all you want to do is become a sports journalist. And by May 24th, the year you graduate, that can't change. If that's what you want, go for it. Work hard to get it. Make your own decisions. That's what we're teaching here.
My mother hated that I did this. She just hated it. I got my parents a subscription. You don't know this story. To the Washington Post, when I started there, they canceled it.
My parents love that I do this.
Huh? It's all my fault, George.
Open it up for questions. Who's first? Okay. I'm not coming to you.
don't want to see. You did talk about that you want to be able to see somebody that has the ability to write. So that's number one on something that you want to see. If you had to list something number two, number three on somebody that was applying for a job, applying for an internship, what would you say that that would be?
Smells good. No, I mean, I'm serious. I mean, you know, I don't dress up to go to my office. I'm usually in my pajamas. But, you know, being appropriately attired and clean, I've met a lot of people who've come to me. Actually, I have hired researchers, to be honest. And, you know, I didn't hire the ones that smell bad. And let me tell you something, there are a lot of sports writers who don't smell so good.
Writing is number one. I would say versatility is number two because the different platforms require different types of writing. You know, you're going to be a little longer form, most likely in print, but you have to learn how to, or at least know how to, write a blog post that condenses things down to the nitty-gritty. If, like at USA Today, all our reporters tweet, I'm not a big fan of breaking news on Twitter, but you do need to be able to get across an idea without getting into legal trouble in 140 characters. So there's all sorts of different types of writing that you have to be able to present.
You should also be able to shoot video.
Yep.
Even if it's just a little handheld you pay $50 for. When you're doing an interview, you should try and videotape it. Every newspaper now is looking for video. I'm trying to build up content through video, the backlog. So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, well-rounded. I mean, I had a guy the other day who has worked for me for a number of years and hasn't really progressed, and he wanted to know why. And I said, because you keep going for one job. You keep going for the one job. And if you don't get that one job, you have nowhere else to go until a year and a half later when that job's open again. And there are 6 other jobs that have been open, but you haven't bothered to learn how to do any of them while you've been here. So whether it's someone that's coming in or someone that's already on the staff, you need to be able to, you need to have the initiative to learn every skill in the building, really. So, I mean, that's how you're going to get ahead. You know, you need to be the guy that's ready to take that job. And if you limit yourself, as someone said earlier, to a narrow focus, it's not going to happen. And the other thing is, I think, is initiative. You know, people that come and ask me the questions about every little thing, like I have every single answer and have the time to go over every aspect of everything, we don't have time for that. Go figure it out. You might screw it up. So what? You know, I mean, that happens. We've all screwed up. But at least try on your own to figure things out. You can't expect someone to hand everything to you. You know, you have to figure it out for yourself sometimes.
Hardworking, dependable, resourceful.
I think, you know, liveliness and energy, you know, there's so much stuff out there information-wise. The people who really bring a liveliness, energy, and freshness to bring you new stuff that's different than the, you know, the big mass of stuff out there, that really gets our attention. And also, similarly, if you get to the stage of having an interview, I highly recommend consistent eye contact. It is a very, very important factor, and you know, that liveliness and energy should also come across in who you are.
Well, a firm handshake, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Peter, you know, part of what you're saying is a matter of personality, and part of it is about writing. Everybody says, oh, we want good writing. Well, what's good writing? I mean, there are different kinds of good writing. The hardest thing for me to have learned as a writer, and it's still hard, is finding a voice. I mean, you know, your voice in a game story really doesn't matter so much. Your job is to say who scored when, and maybe by the 6th paragraph, who won. It used to be in the 1st paragraph, right, George? Yeah. Anyway, but finding a voice that's going to catch somebody's ear and say, oh, wait a minute, they put words together a little bit differently. They use images that, you know, I can see. They don't talk about running through the wall or giving 110%. Something that is, you know, lively, something that has your personality in it. I mean, I don't think you really like this, George, but I once wrote a lead about Reggie Jackson hitting a home run that had to send the wall at Memorial Stadium back in the day to the hospital for x-rays. It was a little tortured, but you get the idea. You know, you're trying to go for something that is beyond the mundane, beyond, you know, the AP copy. Not that anybody reads the AP anymore. But that's sort of the same idea, Peter. But you know, in terms of what you actually put on a page, or if not a page, a space, whatever.
And also reaching that point, just to add to that, you know, getting the kind of job where you're going to get edited is really crucial. I mean, it may seem cool if you know you write something that gets right in there and it runs just the way you wrote it. It's not good. It's not a good thing for any of us. Everybody needs good editing, and if you don't get it early in your career, you're not going to grow. You're not going to become good unless somebody smacks you around and tells you that, you know, you just can't use these particular cliches, and you just got to, you know, whatever it is, editing's crucial.
And there's less and less of it.
Okay, question?
Yeah, there is, but they're still editing.
No, Joe, I'm gonna go up there. Okay, can you go up there?
Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm interested in broadcast production, so I guess it'd be more specific to Chris and Andy. But what kind of creativity are you seeing, like, within the, not only just the broadcast fields, but also in, like, as papers expand online and whatnot? What kind of room for creativity is there?
In broadcast?
Yeah, in production, at least.
Well, I think nonlinear editing has opened up this wealth of all these production values that you can incorporate, okay? The majority of which are so over the top that they actually dummy down the overall process, okay? Less is more in so many ways of life, okay? But creative storytelling is an essential value, and it's something I think we teach pretty well here, that you should be creative in the way that you're telling the story. And whether you're doing a video package that's straight cuts, or dissolved, or some whacked out Final Cut Pro effect that takes 3.5 days to render because it's 3D, guess what? Tell me the story. That's in terms of creativity, that's it. Now, I also think in terms of the broadcast industry, being creative in the way you approach things is important. You know, we're talking about getting noticed. You know, I think the quality of your work is huge, but when we posted a job the other day at my network, and the recruiter called me and said in less than 24 hours we had 100 resumes. And it wasn't even posted like publicly, it was just posted within, you had to click 4 times to find the job posting. So the competition is fierce. So get creative in the way that you're getting noticed, I think, is the key. But in terms of the industry itself, creative approaches to storytelling in broadcast are huge. That's my take.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. What about breaking news? This is for all of you. To where a reporter can still break a story. How important is that nowadays?
Huge.
You gotta be accurate, you gotta be correct. I mean, Twitter now, George, my goodness. The days of just sending out a press release to announce stuff is gone now. People just tweet it and use social media to get information. People want it now. I mean, iPads, people want everything right now. You can't just wait till the next morning and read the papers. I mean, I think that's changed because people. Like, for instance, an Adam Schechter, right. ESPN, right. will break a dozen stories in a 4-month period. Correct. Most of them are right on. I mean, that would seem to be still a very, very valuable asset.
It is when it's right.
Well,
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's thrown out there that you know, ESPN, know a lot of people there, I like a lot of people there, but they throw a lot of stuff against the wall, and a lot of it sticks, but a lot of it doesn't, so you really do have to sort of, you know, just sift through what they're saying, because if it's bad information, who's going to care? Who's going
well, that's always been the case. I mean, that's always been the case.
But it's the volume now is so intense because of Twitter, because of the internet, that stuff just goes out constantly.
Yeah, and he gets credit for breaking stories he doesn't break. Like, like today, we broke Lardarius Webb signing his new deal with the Ravens, and we had it 25 minutes before Adam tweeted it. And then one of the bloggers who used to work for me and now works for ESPN said, according to Adam Schefter, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, wait, you know, we had it 25 minutes before him, and it was the guy who replaced the blogger broke it. So, but he does break a ton. I mean, there's no question. But sometimes he breaks so many stories, he gets credit for some he doesn't.
And sometimes someone else at ESPN will contradict.
Yeah.
Right. You have Mortensen report one thing and Schefter report another. So either way, ESPN's right or wrong, depending on how you look at it. You know.
I'll tell you, who broke the story that the Redskins were going to trade the number of picks to get the second choice in the draft? Who broke that? My point is, there's still room for an enterprising reporter, like Sarah Ganim was a visitor here in February. Tell me she can't get a job anywhere she wants. I mean, she broke that day after day, month after month alone. She broke that Sandusky story. And there's still, I think, a great, great need for that kind of enterprise reporting. Tough enterprise reporting.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, I think I mentioned to you, I had called Sarah and spoken with her the same week that she was coming down here, and that's the kind of reporting that gets on people's radar, that you say this is not just because somebody happened to have a good source and got the story 3 hours before somebody else. This is somebody who you know, spent a lot of her own time and, you know, hung out in the sports world and got a sense of what was going on and really put something together that nobody else had put together. So that's
the biggest story.
Biggest sports story of the year. So, yeah.
And you can notice when you break news for the Diamondback, because we compete against our reporters read it, and you know, I will notice if you beat our guy, or you know, on a Terp story. So
I think the lack of time, the facility of technology to press a button, to, you know, whatever it is, and have it be disseminated, you know, almost instantaneously, puts a greater onus, certainly on editors, but it's your name on the damn thing. And it is so easy. The technology, I mean, we used to have hours to check things. Didn't mean we always made enough calls, as George would have said, you know, or got the people on the phone that you wanted to get on the phone. But you had the time to reflect on what you were writing, to check the sources, and today you got less and less of that. And the temptations, you know, life's become a raw feed. And the self-discipline to say, wait a minute, I'm not really sure. And to be willing to say that in a cauldron of this kind of competition is something that if I were employing people, I'd be looking for too.
I want people who ask the question why. You know, RG3 is not going to work out for the Colts. Well, why? Why? Is it because he wants to go to the Redskins? Is it because he wants to go to the Is it because he proved everything that he needed to prove at the Combine? Is it because he doesn't want to be a ploy in Andrew Luck's agent's game to try to increase the value? Is it because he had plans to go to the Baylor National Championship game? Is it because he really doesn't like Jim Irsay? Is it because he just didn't wanna? Well, I don't know, but I wanted people who know that, who at least want to know that answer. Because we find a tweet, and we interpret that tweet. And that's your point. That's 140 characters of danger. And the words could and should are the scariest things in my newsroom. Because sources, the Redskins could take neither Luck nor RG3. Yeah, I know. There's like 500 guys in the draft. I know that's a possibility. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? But seriously, the words could, all of a sudden is Redskins leaning against quarterbacks. Redskins philosophy shift. Shanahan doesn't know what he's doing. They need new ownership. It's like, whoa. They're just saying that there's a lot more guys they could pick than one of two guys. I mean, people read into, and you know, maybe you heard this, people read into coach's comments that, you know, we're not saying we're taking RG3. We're not saying we're taking, it's a pick. We acquired a pick. Right. People read into that. Well, why? Because that's the truth. They acquired a pick.
Right. From the jump, really that happened from the jump. As soon as the trade was made, oh, we traded to get RG3. No, we traded for the number 2 pick. Mm-hmm. I mean, we traded for the pick, period. We never went out and said, hey, this is the guy. We traded for the pick. Because you never know.
That my Cleveland Browns can get
Is that what you're saying after screwing up this trade?
After screwing up this trade?
Find the source person, please.
down and get the mic. You want to line up? Sure. I don't see a huge line. Hopefully more.
Hi guys, my name's Ben. One of the questions that I've had for a while is like we talked about Adam Schefter getting sources or people talking to their sources. Who do you talk to break this information? I mean, and how do you establish these contacts in the industry?
Oh, it's hard beat work. I mean, and you're getting a good taste of it here. How easy is it to get sources on the Maryland beat? I've never seen colleges clamp down like they do these days on access. And it goes with, I'm sure as students you'll try and meet players and talk with players. That would be one thing I'd do. Then you assistant coaches. It's just hard beat work. It takes a long time. I had a beat writer, Jamison Hensley, covered the Ravens almost 10 years. He's a Maryland guy, Maryland grad. He's at ESPN now as their AFC North blogger. And it took a while to work the beat and get the sources. And one thing we were always able to do was at the owners' meeting, Steve Bisciotti would meet with Jamison. He's the owner of the Ravens. We'd fly Jamison to wherever the owners' meetings were, and he'd meet with them. This past year, Jeff Zrebeck took over for Jamison when he went to ESPN. We weren't sure we were going to get the interview, but Bisciotti said, you know, come on down, send Jeff, and we'll talk. And we have a long one-on-one Q&A with the owner. Afterwards, Jeff said, well, can I get your cell phone? And Steve said, it takes a while for you to earn it. And he goes, it took Jamison years to earn it. So it's earning the trust of sources and, you know, working the beat on the fringes, finding people you trust who give you good information. Because once you get bad information, move on to a different source. But it's hard.
I've been with seven teams and met a lot of the beat writers. One person with one particular team with the paper is really, really creative and really, really clever. He was able to get all the free agents. I mean, all the free agent visits he's able to know because he got it from the travel agent that booked the flights. Somehow he got to know that person, and for a while we never knew, but he ended up finding out through the travel agent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you can shoot for the team owner or the head coach or something, but sometimes a secretary, a travel agent, you know, somebody like that has more information that they're willing to share than higher up people. Can be valuable.
Every telephone call you get, reply to every email. You never know who's going to know who and who they'll be willing to introduce you to if you're responsive.
Monte, who's the best repeat reporter you ever had?
Bob Nightingale. On baseball. He knows everybody. He breaks stories like crazy, and he works it. And it's not just that he does it to break stories. He uses those folks to create great enterprise, putting people together and having a conversation and learning something about it. Or he just knows how to work it.
How does he do it?
How does he do it?
Yeah.
He works it. He works it 24/7, and the guy never stops. He's an animal. He is.
I think one of the common themes here is you have to get off your ass. The temptation nowadays is, hey, I got Google, I got email, I can interview people by emails and all this stuff. Face-to-face communication and somebody who you can look in the eye and you know, really come across with the impression that you really care about what this person does and that you care about the topic that's being discussed. You can't really get that over the telephone or on an email.
And it builds trust. And one of the things that Bob does really well is he'll talk to people, but he doesn't report everything he learns. He'll wait, you know, and because they may have, well, whoever that source may have said, you know, this is off the record. I don't want you to report about this. And he accepts that because at a later date he will get something that's much more valuable.
My question, so then where are the ethics in all of this? I mean, if I have a relationship with somebody because we went to the same school, we played together, like for example, Chris Wright, like that's my boy, like the thing drops on him in a mess situation, that's my friend, he could tell me, he knows I'm into media now, but where's like the ethical values when you start dealing with being a beat and really tracking down information?
Well, we should introduce Monica
sorry.
McNutt, who's going to be, is a graduate of Georgetown. Has seen the light, is going to enter our graduate program, and is also writing a column for the Post local section.
Yes.
You know, those are really case-by-case situations, and no two of them are the same. And it's really hard to answer something conceptually. You know, we have a reporter who covers politics in DC, and at one point started dating a woman who was working first on a volunteer basis and then on a paid basis for one political campaign and then another political campaign. And the reporter disclosed to his editor the nature of this relationship, and so we took pains, because the guy's a really good reporter, to make sure that he was not working on stories that would relate to her involvement. So that's one type of thing, but you know, if you happen to have grown up with somebody who becomes newsworthy, or you have a pre-established friendship with someone, then, you know, unless you are doing something unethical to get that favoritism, if some people just favor talking to you versus talking to somebody else, God bless you, and good luck. You know, so where the ethical question comes in, I think, is case by case.
It's also, you can also disclose if you're related or really close to someone.
Sure.
You could put that in, you know, whatever news organization you're working for.
Yeah,
But
make sure the people you work for know the full story. Don't hide anything, because you lose credibility.
But if you're friends with a source, just make sure that you both know the ground rules. You know what's on the record, what's off the record, what's personal and what's professional.
And if you have any question, ask somebody. If you're in college, ask a dean, ask a professor. If you're working at a paper, ask an editor. Just.
It can work the other way too. I have a friend who's, you know, big hotshot TV investigative type person, and he happened to go to school with somebody who was in the administration at Penn State, high up. He had a pipeline in, but you know, then he was compromised by his feelings for the, you know, for this person and for this person's parent. So they ended up not writing a damn, not doing a damn thing on it. They got beat bad on a story because that personal relationship was you know, in that sense, corrupting. I mean, I've become good friends with Sandy Koufax. I shouldn't write another thing about him until he dies, and I hope, you know, it's not anytime soon. And you know, not that he would give me a quote. He still won't give me a quote. But you know, I really shouldn't, and I won't.
But Sally Jenkins got the last interview with Joe Paterno because Paterno was very fond of Sally Jenkins' father, Dan Jenkins, who covered college football for Sports Illustrated. And you know, fine, if you can get that, take it.
But speaking of Joe Paterno, for many years, I know a number of coaches did this, nights before the games, Joe would meet with all the beat reporters for an off-the-record session, just, how are you, what are you thinking, blah, 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 blah. Well, having covered Penn State for a couple of years, the story is, one time someone took one of those bits of information, it was always a very understood, this is an off-the-record conversation, took one of those bits of information, went public with it. Period. End of Friday night hangout with Coach Joe. I'm pretty sure that wasn't Dan Jenkins who did that. But you have to trust, you know, your sources want to trust you too.
I think this goes off of both of the last two questions. How do you deal with burning bridges with your sources? If something breaks on a player that they trust you, you trust them, but you have to break it because it's the truth, it's the right thing to do. How do you deal with breaking that story and trying to keep that source, even though they're probably not going to talk to you for months, years, maybe never? So how do you deal with the fine line between keeping the sources and trying to avoid burning the bridges with them?
Look for other sources. I mean, if they give you a tip, go confirm it from somebody else. That's part of the hard beat reporting. But it depends. I mean, People burn. I don't recommend it, but people do burn sources. But if you get a tip and it's a good source that you don't want to burn, go find another source. Keep working until you have someone else to and you'll have to find a second person to confirm it anyway, right? I mean, it's world of Twitter, right? Yeah. You guys do know the two-source rule? Yeah. Find journalism school that you're at. Still look for two sources.
Monte, you didn't use anonymous sources, correct, at USA Today?
No, we do, but we have a vetting process.
Yeah.
For a while, did you not
Kinard didn't.
use anonymous
Yeah. But that changed, I don't know, 6-8 years ago.
Yeah.
We started doing it.
And we have the same thing. If we have an unnamed source, I have to find out who the source is and take it to my boss and get it approved.
The more interesting, the interesting question is, you're talking about burning a source, but sources often burn journalists too. And that, once that happens, that source is like off limits. You just can't trust them.
I just think sports and politics in particular are really hard on this issue because depending on the circumstances, the journalist can be frozen out, quite easily. And I've just, from personal experience, seen situations where just because the beat reporter had to be really careful to triangulate what he or she was doing so we didn't get frozen out or kicked out of the locker room or whatever, that in some cases we would send in another reporter who was not even in sports or not even in politics to look into a situation because the beat reporter's hands were essentially tied by the nature of all these relationships. And there's no easy answer for how you get around that. It's partly the nature of the beast of sports writing, I think.
Yes, want to grab the mic?
Go way down to queue up.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rhiannon Walker, and recently college recruits have become more and more popular these days. You have to talk to them. They are graduates out of high school, and if they're really big recruits, they feel very good about themselves. When it comes to finding out about commitments, for instance, Maryland thought they got a commitment from Sam Cassell the other week, but they talked to his father, and he said his son had not committed. So in situations like that, how do you guys figure out who to talk to find out for sure, like, oh, he's definitely committed, or you talk to 2 or 3 people, like his head coach, his AAU coach, him, but then you talk to the father, and he's like, no, he hasn't done that. Who's that a reflection on, the reporter? And if the reporter's wrong in that situation, how would you like your reporter to say, like, it's my bad, like, I should have done a better job finding out?
Well, I mean, we reported it, that he was going to Maryland, and the sourcing was pretty impeccable. And I don't even know where it stands now. Anybody else? I mean, it's...
He's going to take visits to the University of Southern Florida, and he's also going to look at his father's alma mater, Florida State University.
I mean, our sourcing was excellent. I didn't question the reporter on the sourcing. I honestly think he did tell these sources that he's committing, and then maybe slept on it and changed his mind. But man, recruiting it's tough because you're dealing with kids. You're dealing with kids. Change their mind, overnight, and it's an important decision. And I really don't get that worked up over recruiting. When Maryland signed, was it Diggs? Yeah, well, I mean, we were all over that, but I didn't lose sleep if we got beat on it. So recruiting's tough. I almost want to leave it to the websites. I mean, but yeah, you're right. Who do you believe? And you got to trust your reporter, trust the sources, and honestly, he still may come to Maryland. And I think he did tell people he's coming to Maryland. Maryland. Yeah, I mean, then that was the straw. We decided to go with it when we saw the tweet. So, because we had other really good sourcing for it. So.
How do you know when somebody's really tweeting and it's not some?
Yeah, that's tough.
I've never gotten
yeah.
clear on that, and I just kind of, it's very scary.
There are verified accounts for certain.
Exactly.
In fact, this week, maybe you saw this, RG3's account got verified, which was like a really big deal because he had like 20,000 followers, but no one knew if it was actually the real one, and so it's like.
How do you know he's writing it?
No.
You know he's not.
Twitter has like I don't know if it's I want to say this term, but it's. Yeah, it's like they do an investigation to find out if it's the actual legitimate person, and there's a little blue shield is a good way to put it, on the actual account that you know that at RGIII, which I think is his handle, is verified. But for high school students who have 72 followers and all of them are their friends, you don't. It's very dangerous.
Even if it's got the blue shield, you don't know that the person. I mean, it's some, forgive me, PR guy who's writing it for them. I mean, do you think Ashton Kutcher really writes his own stupid tweet? I mean, give me a break. I mean, maybe he did 3 times. All right. I actually think this is where guys like Tony come in because, ultimately, a really good PR guy, they may not tell you everything because they're part of their job not to tell you everything. But if you ask a really good PR guy, is this true? If they're good at their job, they'll tell you because they won't want to lie to people. And they may not, they may not say, oh, and by the way, this and this and this and this is also true. But a really good source or a really good PR man, they'll tell you. If you ask them the right question, and that's where reporting comes in. It's knowing how to ask the right question. Is that true?
That is true. I'll never lie to a reporter. I might say I can't say, or I might say you might need to talk to someone, or, yeah. She's right.
And but don't use tweets as their main source. Please. Don't. Yeah, sure.
For instance, with Joe Paterno, they said he died, but then his son came out and was just like, no, my dad's not dead. As a reporter and as the editor, how do you guys go about that? Like, what do you say to someone when you've reported something wrong to your higher up official?
God, I hope I don't ever have to. I mean, yeah, that case was sad, and my wife went to Penn State, so we followed it pretty closely. And the guy, I mean, everybody pretty much quit over it. I mean, they apologized, they quit. I mean, we had a case last summer with Mike Flanagan. Unfortunately took his life, and everybody was looking for the Baltimore Sun to confirm it. I mean, it was all out in Twitterverse and Facebook and all the social media, and we did not go with it till we had an impeccable source. The police weren't confirming anything, and the Orioles weren't confirming it. So, but everybody, I mean, we knew people were waiting for us to say it's true. And it was, we had everything on the fringe. We had everything. We did not have the one source we felt totally comfortable with to verify it. And it lasted several hours. It was excruciating because people were coming to our site to look for it. And, but we waited, and I'm glad we did till we had the proper sourcing. And it's hard not to put it out there because it was out there already.
If you really blow it, you'll become memorable, and if somebody else beats you on it, that lasts for a day or two. But if you really get it wrong, then that has staying power. And what a lot of organizations nowadays are doing is, even if you don't know it for sure, you post on the website saying that. CNN is saying that Congressman Giffords is dead, but this couldn't be confirmed.
And that's how the Paterno one spread. So
right.
The Walsh newspaper reported it, and then CBS reported it, and then it spread.
Yeah, our policy is don't declare anybody dead until it's official. You can't take that back. I mean,
One more
Frank
question.
Sullivan.
Yeah, right.
Hey guys, my name is Kellen, and I'm going to start here as a grad student in the summer. And my question is, when you guys are hiring, do you prefer kind of someone who's really established like a beat or like a niche reporting, or are you looking for someone who has like a more broad experience in writing about a lot of different topics, not just sports but anything? Or are you looking for? Is it better for someone who has like a specific niche that they're very good at?
Well, I think Monte said it earlier about versatility, right? Was it? Yeah, you always look to see if they cover different sports. You can write game stories, features, blogs, you know, enterprise. I always look for, I know it's cliche, but enterprise is terrific. You don't see it much from college students, and it usually stands out when you find that story. But yeah, no, I'd look for versatile the better, especially someone who can cover professional lacrosse in the summer. I think every intern has covered the Chesapeake Bayhawks over the summer. So.
It's good to know what your interests are and what you think your strengths are, but I think you were saying before, don't lock yourself into one job and never take the other 6 jobs that are there, kind of thing. Because frankly, anybody who hires you is probably going to say, I need somebody there. You're there. You know, even if it's not your main interest, but take it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that versatility is really important, and the willingness to do maybe, you know, a lot of the less glamorous stuff that needs to get done, and the just be reliable. You know, we want people who are going to show up when they're supposed to show up, and then they don't leave loose ends. And then from there, you know, opportunities happen because, you know, those are the people you start leaning on for new opportunities, for a break that maybe happens. And maybe you'll have a chance. We run a mixed martial arts site, but we run it like a real news enterprise. And we have a guy who just graduated from the University of Arizona, and you know, he does a lot of the tough work. You know, he's working nights, these events end late, he's copy-editing cut lines and different things like that. But then he came up with an idea for a piece that we could run every single morning because he understood like there was a gap in our coverage. And so we started running it, and now one of our editors left to become the managing editor of Pro Football Talk. And you know, we're seriously considering taking this kid and giving him a bigger role because of what he did when he was given the opportunity.
Dean, Kevin Close would like to say a few closing words, and then the panel will be available after the formal session to talk to any of you. So, Dean Close?
Don't go away, George. I just wanted to say a couple of things about sports and sports writers. There's a sort of general perception that sports is somehow perhaps not as interesting or as deep as public affairs or as political reporting or as reporting on environment or whatever it might be. I will tell you that in my experience, which is a broad experience across 25 years at the Washington Post and many other places, I saw sports writers up close and personal in my time, and they had a greater sense of acuity, of the drama of human endeavor, of attention that people pay to sports. And why is that so? It's because we're all looking for some kind of sublime experience of what human endeavor, failure, and success really is. And sports becomes a kind of encapsulating moment for that. I think that sports writing and sports writers can bring us, and sports journalists, not just writers, but bloggers, even people who are doing Twitter, can bring us to a kind of sublime understanding of the power and the drama of the human experience in a very compressed way. I also found watching the sports writers who gathered from around the world to the Summer Olympics in Moscow long before anyone here was even born in 1980, that when they arrived on scene, they were ready to go. The people who were covering track and field, they knew to the third decimal place what the competitors had done, what they'd done in their trials to get there. They had a phenomenal ability to understand what the differences were between success and near success, because they had steeped themselves in the experience of it and in the knowledge base of it. And finally, I wanted to say about sources. Sourcing is always very difficult under any circumstances. To some extent, it can happen you may hear something that somebody has told you in a completely different conversation, and an hour later, you suddenly realize that's a clue to something else. That happened to me once, and it ruined a lifetime friendship I had because we were talking about something else entirely, completely entirely different. And it happened that I was thinking about a lot of other things during the middle of this conversation. The conversation was held far away from the United States, but as it turned out, I realized after the fact that what I'd been hearing was a conversation about a search that was going on literally for the presidency, which was then vacant, of Harvard University. Hadn't talked about that at all, but I suddenly realized in the context of just thinking about what this conversation was about, and I put a call through from Moscow, where I was, to the foreign desk at the Washington Post and said, I think you ought to check this. It didn't come from anybody. It's just something I know is probably true. And some of the senior editors who were very interested in getting there first on that story before the New York Times started working that, what I told them, which was, I think I know who it is. It has nothing to do with anything that anybody ever told me, but it just formulated in my mind. I now know that who the next choice would be. And they went after the story. They went after the identity. They got it. They ran a story. It turned out to be true, and it was so true that Harvard didn't do it. And it ruined two friendships that I'd had all my life. And those people don't talk to me anymore again. They were not sources. It just happened. So you have to go with what your instincts are and what your insights are, and your mind has to be always thinking in another realm. What do I learn from this other experience? And what can I know that might be useful to what we're in the game for? And the game is to find out things that other people would be interested in that are based in verifiable fact, and that also can replicate the power and the drama of human experience, which I think is what sports writing and sports journalism in video, in audio, we know that for sure, and in the written word, in whatever form it is, can bring us there like no other form of journalism. So it's been great to be with you all, to be with these great professionals, and to have such avid interest in this kind of journalism. So I'm delighted you came tonight, and thank you very much. And thank you, George.
Kevin, before you wrap it up, I want to thank each and every panelist for you've given so much to our audience, and feel free to talk to any of the individual panelists on your way out. And also we have refreshments. Please partake. And this panel was put together for you. And it's our great pleasure. And the Shirley Povich Center thanks you for coming. Kevin, if you want to.
I think that's good enough.
Thank you. Yeah, nice meeting you.